Pizza is in a league of its own when it comes to savory dishes. Without a doubt, it reigns as one of the most popular foods in the world. I think almost everyone has at least one excellent memory of eating a great pizza slice. The warmth of it, the sauce coating your tongue, the softness of the cheese, biting into the crust, and so on. Which is why I'm really excited to share this recipe with you today. This no-knead recipe is the result of a bunch of experiments. It's simple, easy, and adjustable. You can play around with different toppings or even different shapes. Make it your own. As a quick note, there are so many different types and styles of pizza. In this recipe, I'm not going to say it's a particular representation of any authentic or traditional style of pizza. It's just a recipe that worked for me. I liked it, I think it tasted good, and I hope you'll like it too. With that, I'm going to get my apron on and start getting to work on it. Well, if we're really starting from the absolute beginning, we need to make the leavening agent, our fruit yeast water. If you want more comprehensive information on this, we have a more complete video on it in the description box below. If not, then you can simply follow along with these steps and wait 4 to 6 days before using. I usually use any fruit in season: apple, tomatoes, grapes, and so on. As you can see, the process of making fruit yeast water is easy. Just chop them up, add water and sugar, cover the jar, shake, and voila. Once we've got our fruit yeast water, we can start making our Precement, which is my all-time favorite, Poolish. Essentially equal amounts of bread flour and fruit yeast water. In this case, I'm taking 100 grams of each and mixing properly. Not much in the way of technique needed here. That's one of the things I really like about it. Just combine until all the flour is fully hydrated. There shouldn't be any dry flour lying around, and it should look relatively smoother. And then cover with plastic wrap, leave for 10 to 18 hours until it looks like this, full of bubbles and with a slightly concave downward surface. Alright, we have our Poolish now. We can continue on to the final pizza dough. So here's the full list of ingredients. All of the Poolish, 100 grams of water, 15 grams of sugar, 5 grams of salt, 11 grams of olive oil, and finally 200 grams of bread flour. With all that mentioned, let's head on to making the dough. Prepare a large mixing bowl, then set it atop a scale, and first get your Poolish in. Then the water. Okay. Before I add the other ingredients, I'm going to mix in the Poolish in the water. You don't really have to do this, but I like to do it to make the following steps easier. Okay, it shouldn't take too long. I'm pretty happy when it looks like this. Next, I'm gonna add in the sugar. So sugar is really helpful in getting the crust to brown, especially at home oven temperatures. And it also aids in feeding the yeast, which is why you won't taste that much sweetness in the resulting dough. It helps the yeast rise faster. Actually, you could add even more sugar or use brown sugar if you wanted a pizza with a darker crust, so like a really brown crust. After sugar, I'm going to add in the salt. Just 5 grams of salt. With the salt in, we add in the olive oil. As for olive oil, I think it adds a nice, smooth feel to the dough, and it also adds a little bit of that taste. It won't affect the flavor too much, but at 11 grams, it's enough for you to get a hint of it. It's nice. Once all those are in, we're just going to mix thoroughly until the olive oil looks evenly dispersed. This looks pretty good. So with all of our wet ingredients combined, we can add 200 grams of our bread flour. Now that the flour's in, this is when the going is going to get a bit rough. We're going to mix them until they turn into a smooth, homogeneous lump mass. It's a bit of an arm workout. while you're mixing it, make sure to give it a good mix because this is a no-knead recipe. We're not going to get another chance to mix it. It's going straight to rest after this. When it looks like this, we're good to go. So I'm going to cover it with some plastic and then leave it out at room temperature for 3 hours or until it doubles in size. And then put it in the fridge for 7 hours. But if you're willing to wait longer, you could actually leave it in for up to 2 days, so a total of like 48 hours. After the 3 and 7 hour fermentation processes, we can bring the dough out of the fridge. Set it out until it comes to room temperature, and then, before we scrape it out onto our work surface, I'm gonna dust it with some flour. So you're gonna need quite a bit. It's gonna be pretty wet. Then take the dough out onto the surface. Once you've gotten it out, I'm just going to sprinkle it with some more flour because it's really wet. And then we're going to try and shape it into a big boule. Try not to use a lot of force when doing this. We don't want to degas it at all. We want to preserve all of these air bubbles. As soon as you've got it in a satisfactory round and even shape, divide it into 2 equal parts. After dividing it into 2, we're then going to round both those segments into 2 medium balls. Again, not using as little force as you can. We really don't want to degas anything. So that was our pre-shaping. Once they're into round balls, I'm just going to cover them with these 2 glass bowls. All right. And then we're going to leave them for about an hour to relax. Okay, it's been an hour. The pizza dough balls have completely relaxed. So this is when you're going to need a lot of flour. Sprinkle it on quite liberally. And then we're going to start to stretch it into that classic pizza shape. So there are a lot of ways you can do this actually. First, I'm going to use my fingers and just sort of press out to form a crust. Okay, after I formed sort of a crust, a thicker part on the outside, I'm going to roll it over my knuckles. So this is a nice way to stretch it out evenly. So rolling it over the knuckles is one way to spread it out. If you were, the easiest way would be actually just drop it on the parchment and then spread it out with your hands. That's super easy. Rolling it out over your knuckles is much faster though. Okay, so you could use, instead of parchment paper, you could just use bread flour or rice flour or cornmeal. But I found that parchment paper relieves a lot of the stress because you can just leave it on. While you're adding the toppings, you don't have to rush quickly to stop it from sticking to your peel or your pan. And using parchment paper, reduces the worries you have while it's just lying there. So, now that it's on the parchment paper, let's get to our toppings. I'm just going to be using some tomato sauce. I made it myself from fresh tomatoes. You can just use the canned tomatoes, it tastes just as good. And mozzarella cheese. It's very simple, I like it that way. So while I'm spreading on the toppings, I'm also preheating the oven to the highest temperature my oven can go to, and setting it on top and bottom heat. Okay, I'm done with the toppings. We're gonna slide it into the oven and leave it for 15 to 20 minutes, although it should only take 15, until it's golden brown, until the crust is golden brown.